Hello, we're back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I can see Matthew there, Matthew Spriggs. Matthew Spriggs is going to speak to us. Matthew's currently based in Vanuatu, formerly of the ANU. Just because we were a little anxious about the vagaries of the Vanuatuan internet, Matthew very sensibly has already pre-recorded his talk, which goes for a little bit over 40 minutes. David's going to show me how to do that, and then we will be back for questions.
Good afternoon, lo yufil everyone. Mimi Stablo Vanuatu, and Bangi talk about Captain Cook. Good morning, everybody. I'm recording this in Vanuatu, and I'll be talking about Captain Cook and the naming of the New Hebrides, which happened nearly 250 years ago in 1774. Okay, Cook was not the first European to visit Vanuatu. That dubious privilege goes to de Queirós on the de Queirós and Torres expedition of 1606. Between then and de Bougainville in 1768, there was a considerable gap, but he was quickly followed by Captain Cook, and then the next recorded sort of official expedition was the Russian Golovnin in 1809. Now, de Queirós called the area La Australia del Espiritu Santo and thought that it was part of the great southern continent. De Bougainville called it Les Grands Cyclades after some islands in the Aegean, the Cyclades, and Captain Cook in 1774 decided on the name of the New Hebrides. Obviously a bit of French-British rivalry there. And 1809, Golovnin, who was very much following in the footsteps of Captain Cook, visited the same area, port resolution on the island of Tanna, and also left another quite detailed account. Now, Vanuatu is always happy to put out a stamp commemorating these various European visitors. So first of all, we have the sort of trifecta of Queirós, de Bougainville, and Captain Cook. In 2009, they even erected a bust to Golovnin in Port Vila. It sits there on the seafront, a metal bust. And in the 1606 to 2006 anniversary, which has been written about extremely well by Margaret Jolly in various places, we have the claim there that on the stamp itself, you can't see it very well, but just below where it says Vanuatu, it says 1606 de Queirós discovery of Vanuatu. Now, of course, we all know that the discoverers of Vanuatu, the real discoverers, were not European explorers and visitors, but were the Lapita people 3,000 years ago who were the real discoverers. There were no people in Vanuatu before that time period. And we even got a stamp to commemorate the discovery of the Lapita cemetery site of Teuma on Efate Island in 2004, with a sort of a recreated scene of events happening on the beach there. But Cook is our concentration because of the 250th anniversary coming up in 2024. And he reached Vanuatu in July 1774 and left its waters the start of September 1774, and then was the first European to sight New Caledonia. He had significant contacts with local people on the island of Malakula over 2 days at Port Sandwich, named by him, of course. On the island of Erromango, where there was a attempted seizure of his boat by local people at Potnarravin, and we'll hear a lot more about that during this presentation. And then he stayed for 14 or 15 days, 5th to 20th August, at Port Resolution on the island of Tanna, further south. There were other ephemeral landings, certainly one on Erromango on the 3rd of August on Elizabeth Bay, which is the opposite side of the island, the western side from Potnarravin, and also just before Cook leaves Vanuatu waters, one of his crew members lands on the island of Espiritu Santo in Big Bay, which is the place of the landing by de Queirós in 1606. Now, it's not at all clear why Cook named the archipelago the New Hebrides. It doesn't, to anybody else, bear any relation to the Hebrides off the west coast of Scotland. But I have read a suggestion that he thought that the New Hebrides was on the opposite side of the world from the old Hebrides, and that may explain why obviously the Hebrides is off the west coast of Scotland, whereas the New Hebrides is off the eastern side of the next group that Cook visited and named New Caledonia, which really is Latin for New Scotland. So perhaps he was trying to figure out some mirror image of the Northern Hemisphere. Now, for the 250th anniversary, there's a lot of interest from the Vanuatu government and personal interest from the Prime Minister, who is from the island of Tanna, where Cook spent most time. We will be having a workshop of the Vanuatu Cultural Centre field workers. These are the Indigenous anthropologist volunteers who are men and women who are based on many of the islands of Vanuatu and get together and facilitate and encourage the work of the Vanuatu Cultural Centre and the National Museum under the kind of eyes and ears of the Cultural Centre on each of the islands. So we'll be bringing them to Vila for one of their annual workshops, and we're hoping this will lead to what we want them to talk about is Indigenous memories of Captain Cook and other early European encounters. And we hope this will lead to a book called Our Captain Cook. And here the concern is to instill some Indigenous agency and ownership concerning the stories of Captain Cook. There are stories of Captain Cook told to this day on many islands. As I believe Deborah Bird Rose has written about Australia, many of these are in areas where there is no European account that Captain Cook ever landed. But we don't care about that because we want to hear about our Captain Cook, not the European Captain Cook. We're hoping to have an exhibition of Cook voyage artefacts and drawings, engravings at the Vanuatu National Museum in 2024. This will be both an inspiration, we hope, for local artists. Some of the artifact forms that from 250 years ago may be forms that are no longer produced in the islands. Also, it will add new knowledge, provide new knowledge for people about Cook's voyage, because none of these artifacts have ever returned to Vanuatu in the last 250 years. So we are hoping for the collaboration of various European museums. We also intend to have an international conference examining Cook's visit and impact. And again, this is to do with new knowledge. When such events are held in relation to such commemorations often either new sources of information or revisiting or restoring of the stories of these explorers do come out. And quite often, and this would be in relation to the exhibition as well, quite often in recent years, additional artefacts have been found that that come from the place of concern here, Vanuatu, and already some artefacts previously believed to be from Cook's very brief time on the island of Niue have now been are now re-identified as being artefacts from Vanuatu, from Tanna, I believe. So already stirred up by the interest in the 250th anniversary, newly identified artefacts are starting to be found. We also hope to publish all the various Cook voyage accounts of Vanuatu, put them all in one place, and we'll have other educational materials and activities in schools and such. Public education is very important. Part of the importance of Captain Cook in Vanuatu is that many islands that he named, or places on islands, still bear the name which he gave to them. But people today often have no idea who the person is after whom their islands are named. One thinks of the Maskelynes, the Maskelyne group in Vanuatu, named by one of the astronomers on the voyage. I would think there'd be very few people who live in the Maskelyne Islands who have any idea who Maskelyne was. The Shepherd group would be another example. And then perhaps through misunderstandings, various names for islands which are extant today can be traced back to Cook's visit, the island of Tanna, and importantly, as we'll see, the island of Erromango. Also, there's the potential of a replica Cook ship. I don't think there's a replica of the Resolution, so it might be the Endeavour. It would be great if that could land at each point that Cook landed on the same day as in 1774, but 250 years later. And this obviously would serve an immediate public education function, and also I think would be a great tourist attraction. And Vanuatu, post the COVID lockouts, will certainly require or hope to get a lot of tourist interest coming back here again. There'll be stamps, maybe even a statue. I understand that in some parts of the world, statues of dead white men are not very much in favour, and in some cases are being torn down. I won't pass any judgment on that, but I would note that in Vanuatu, a government minister has already raised the request with the British High Commissioner to Vanuatu for a statue of Captain Cook. Given that we've got a bust of Queirós in Big Bay Santo and a bust of Golovnin, who's described by said government minister as very much the second 11 or the second team, there is a interest in having some sort of statue of Captain Cook erected in Vanuatu, perhaps going against the general world trend. Now, there are, as I mentioned, many Indigenous memories of Captain Cook. Here is just one small example, and the information is précised by Margaret Jolly in a wonderful article that she wrote in 2009 there. But the account actually comes from Jack Taylor's ethnography of Northern Pentecost, the other side. And he notes that there's no evidence that Cook landed directly on the island of Pentecost. But as he says, but today on the beach at Aroa, or rather Margaret Jolly praising Jack Taylor says, today on the beach at Aroa, there is a local testament to Cook's arrival in words carved in stone. Sand has swept over these rocks. The inscriptions are no longer clear, but some Siaraga, that's people of North Pentecost, insist that Cook himself inscribed them. There are 3 different accounts of what is written there. New Hebrides discovered by James Cook, Moon, Sun Moon, or Captain Cook 1887. one of Taylor's Raga interlocutors says that there is a picture of a crescent moon, traces of Cook's footprints, and a mark from his walking stick. As I am an adopted Sia Raga person, I hope to, before 2024, get up there and hopefully uncover the now buried in sand inscription supposedly marking Captain Cook. And as Margaret Jolly also notes, based on Jack Taylor's writing, there is a belief among some people on Pentecost that the true date of Captain Cook's arrival was 1887 rather than 1774, based on this inscription. There's also in South Pentecost, I understand, a stone which is linked to Captain Cook. And this is another area where in European accounts, there's no memory of Captain Cook there. Captain Cook did most certainly land on Tanna. And in his narrative, he talks about a man, Pauwang, who Monty Lindstrom, who's done a lot of anthropology and linguistics on Tanna, records as being the name still current today, Pavegan or Pavegan. And the important part of Monty Lindstrom's account that's worth noting is that he makes a general point that names give you rights to land and resources on Tanna. And so there's a sort of limited stock of names, and these are passed down. So the Pavegan Pauwang, who Captain Cook met, there's also Pavegan, at least one individual of that name around today, and he would be perfectly, it would be perfectly ordinary on Tanna if he were to talk about memories held there about Captain Cook's visit. It would be perfectly normal for him to say or talk about when he met the, as Monty has it, intrepid explorer back in 1774, and he may well use the first person pronoun I to do so. So clearly in Vanuatu, we do have different temporalities to the European ones that's recorded in the Cook journals that Beaglehole edited back in the 60s. Our Captain Cook takes part in these different temporalities. On the island of Erromango, where the local people supposedly attempted to detain the rowboat that Cook turned up in, and then there was Cook's men fired upon them. There is, from 1902, the missionary Robertson would have taken this account in the local language on Erromango, and he has an oral tradition which also records the name of the chief, who was the man who Cook fired at, although his gun misfired, but somebody else then shot Narum. He was the only person who was killed in that encounter. But that stories about that single day, the 4th of August, 1774, continue to be told. In 1902, I don't know exactly when Robertson recorded the story, but 100 years afterwards or so. Also, Evelyn Cheeseman, who spent time on Erromango in 1928 to sometime in 1928 to 30, she records hearing the story from Mooney, who's the chief of Portnarvin, which is where where Cook's attempted landing was, and she went to visit Portnarvin and says, "I went over the scene with Mooney. These natives have never read Cook's journal, nor had the story been repeated to them in detail, yet their traditional story agrees with what we know in remarkable fashion." And part of what she notes is that Cook's men had first of all landed on what's an island that I think he named Goat Island, which was a small islet off the coast near Portnarvin, and people would not go there because it was believed to be haunted by spirits, and they first see Cook's men leaving that spirit island and then coming towards them. She says, I asked Mooney, has anybody ever got onto that island? Oh no, missus, it's a bad place. He got devil, which informs us that, as with my introduction, Cheeseman was carrying out her recording in Bislama, the Vanuatu pidgin. Now, there is a story about Erromango, and I want to do some more research on this. And this is an idea, here is an example of it, that the island of Erromango actually comes from a misunderstanding at Port Narrabeen. Captain Cook lands, according to Erromangans, as recorded by the former curator of the Cultural Centre of Port Vila, Vanuatu. Cook was presented with types of food and was repeatedly told, as he seemed unwilling to take them, Aramango, they're good. This type of food is good. And he mistook this for the name of the island. Now, I don't know when this account was first recorded. It's obviously was extant by 1996. It will be interesting to see if any further research on the documents of Cook's voyage actually confirms this, or if there's some, I know there's some suggestion that Erromango was the name of the island by the people of Tanna, given to it by the people of Tanna on the neighbouring island. Kirk Huffman claims that the real name of the island to local people is Nello Company, and there are other variations of names for parts of the island. So this is still something which needs a lot further work. Now, a wonderful book was produced by the Erromango Cultural Association, edited by Indigenous researcher Anna Naupa. It came out in 2011, I think, on the custom and culture of Erromango. It does have a nice map which shows where some of these events took place. If you can see the cursor, Elizabeth Bay here is where the first landing by Mr. Gilbert, one of the ship's crew, on the 3rd of August. The events and the attempted seizure of Cook's boat took place here in what's called Polenia Bay or Portinia Bay at Port Narrabeen. And as Cook was leaving, he then, or someone in his crew, then named the large bay to the south of this peninsula, which Cook called Traitor's Head because he wasn't very happy with the way he was received on Erromango. It became known as Cook's Bay here. Now, in that 2011 book, there is an oral tradition about Cook landing that I'll just read out here. And it states that Cook went to Port Narrabeen, where his crew fought the people who had never seen white men before. The white men smelled different, and the Port Narrabeen people went up close for a good sniff. This led to a fight. The Port Narrabeen people were tough and took over Captain Cook's boat so that the white men couldn't push off the shore. They had to cut the rope, and then the people were stuck on the boat but couldn't swim. Gunshots were fired at people on the shore, and when one fell down and blood ran, the Port Narrabeen people realised that these white men were trying to kill them. Captain Cook hid. He was scared. What kind of men are these, he said. We're shooting at them, but they're dodging bullets. The Port Narrabeen people drew these scenes on their stones, which we can see today. And this refers to some rock art on the beach in that area. So that's another version of the story of Captain Cook. And then what I want to really spend the rest of the time, this is a version by Ruth Yapini, and I thank her very much for sharing her version of Captain Cook arriving on Erromango and other early contacts, as we'll see, and my other co-author Anna Naupa secured the interview or the account that Ruth Yapini tells. It's in Bislama, the Vanuatu pidgin. I'll let it run for a while, then give an English translation, and then start it up again. So let's just hear Ruth Yapini's account. I can get that up.
Blomi Ruth Yapina. Papa Blomi Joseph Yapina. Woman Blomi Vita Logo. Tula Ibintalemuan story Blomi. Story Emi Blog Captain Cook. Captain Cook Emi Manwe Emi been come long on Hebrides before. The time Emi first white man, the time Emi come solo Cook's Bay. Time Emi come solo Cook's Bay. The old man long Cook's Bay lo Potnia Coanta block do it. Orchestra lo Plesia, the 800,000 old man time you live before ya lo time lo old man we only Malmal, you know, what I'm close. Nale, time where only harem ship, only run everyone only come down. Time only come down with ship, Otikan, Ikam stop. Ali Odiko, Captain Good came come out no more, Ikarem one carton apple, Karem Paul, Karem pineapple, and come to show. After I show apple get us say why Odikakai apple. The chief logata me Podney. And then you know, why you run a guy by me Kakai the same. Suppose we me dead, you like Kilimania. Was me noted, was me noted, but you will I like the le time we hemi kakai hemi no hemi hemi kutishu hemi kira dalam se hemi dalam flo hemi dalam se armaingo hemi se ol kuduan lo lanus hemi se ikut na armaingo ale olikaram olikakai time olikakai pe from olilu white mania from hemi white man olikakai and this to white mania oliko holen hand olilu from hemi white olilu all or smell them, close from him, it will smell nice, or you look at Morico, pull up, Morico, close up. White man, me, try to more shooting. And they go back.
Now, what Ruth is saying, my translation to English, my name is Ruth Yapini, my father was Joseph Yapini, my mother was Peter Lovo. The two of them told me a story about Captain Cook. Captain Cook was a man who came to the New Hebrides a long time ago. He was the first European visitor, and he came ashore at Cook's Bay. And all the people of Cook's Bay from Potnia as far as Tuat, there were 800,000 of them who lived here before at the time. When they wore traditional dress, they didn't wear clothes. When they heard of the ship, everyone ran down, and when they did, a boat came towards the shore and stopped. Captain Cook stepped out of it carrying a carton of apples and chickens and pineapples and came and put them on the shore. He showed the apples to them all and indicated they should eat the apples. Their chief Potney said, "No, don't eat them. I'll try them first, and if I die, kill this man. If I don't die, then you can all eat too." When he went to eat the apple, he found it was good, it was sweet. He told them, "Aramaino, all good ones." In language, he said, "They're good, Aramaino." They came forward, took the apples and started eating. But when they came forward, they looked at the white man because he was white. They ate the sweet apples. They went to touch his hand. They wanted to look because he was white. They smelled his clothes because he'd put on perfume and he smelled nice. Many, many people went up close to him. He became afraid of them all and shot them. And then he went back to his ship.
Costa he sent them along Samoa. Along Samoa, they come to one seat or the full map axe to fight to the American. Olikam so long Naiwan. Long still of base. Olikam solo Brescia or Ade. Olmania olikam down. The Olketa from Olkaram Axe, Oliquid Locks. Alol Manarmango, Olketa is from Bonaro, Olkaram Bonaro. Olify to several Manarmango from Olimegam Ponaro, Olketa, Simulsa Machi, Oliputum. When him Loponaro, time is per man by man, is a vetricum spia must be by Savas. Olim Speramol after the Cademolgata 2 locks, Oli Pregamolax, Oli Pol town, stop. Malay, time way. Fight to look water law, river law, Chulura long, Naiwan come platinum. Only trip, both him trip rocket, who caramel back in the car, only fight. Only stop catamorgeta locks, only suspend morgeta. That Mimi look one axia, Babablo, me pin caramismol, me pin ask him, say. Aksi ibin karamu yoga max ni look na wait. MC Mr. Story, me and now in Taran Sorian. Or if I don't I want to pregam maxia, and now I'm Karamwani, I comes up max. After time we finish, she be go back.
Okay, Ruth says, time passed, and then they sent people from Samoa on a ship. I think she's now talking about the sandalwood era from the late 1820s onwards. The sandalwood vessel that I think she's referring to, the crew were actually Tongans, but it doesn't matter, Samoans to her. The ship, they'd filled it up with war axes ready for a fight. They came ashore at Naiwan, still in Cook's Bay. They came ashore and the people came down to the shore. But the Samoans were carrying axes. Erromango men used bows and arrows in fighting, so they fought, and Erromango men, they used magic on their bows and arrows, and even if a man dodged, the arrows always found their mark. They shot them, they cut them with axes, they broke the Samoans' war axes, and they all fell down dead. They fought, and the river and sea at Naiwan became red with blood. More came from the ship. They fought again, cut them with axes, they shot them. When I was small, I saw an axe my father was carrying. I asked him where he got it, as axes of today look different. Then he told me this story. At the fight at Naiwan, they broke all the axes, and he had acquired one of them, and we used to cut firewood with it. After this, the ship went away.
Tok chemical round long, Luciano round or mount. Say one bigger fight to make him. After lo narsed lo pod narvin all pala one chief ya ni blame no pen and harem now him say okay for me you now you take more money you like fight first time then now ya me suppose we must give him other lawyer suppose you look hemi come estima ya hemi come by you will stand up and give you one sign of me by me now, by bargain. Pesipia, me costa, coco, long time. Me look all man or loco, and me come bargain. He come, Sipia, he come with them 2 sipita. I later come to one icarem musket, one icarem, or something will make him out. So, come, or kill him, all mania, everyone is dead, from by all the putum. House will get out long to it from only looking place for you me lower mango or like him from maybe put to a place. We all fly put him top to finish. Say, by you fly must stand up and tap no more. Look, steamer hemi come, you fly must top to become domi. Make him one sign, come domi. Time we make him sign by Mimi ready. Time we only make him sign, he go down, or fly hemi look, or fly hemi get up and make him custom brand. Karam things stone one him and he put him low water. Low there from mania and he custom brand Tanna. Then he make him lightning low peak plus sun and lightning peak one, high blow man open. A late time he stop lightning, Tanna ya peak plus Tanna and he 2 story one up. One to Blasibia he come and say you like Magam good with the man with them random. Or Magam good with the man with them random. Time we him come to major still to small island, no peak island, and Miss Sagam to Storia. tanda ya. Sagam tu pula story ko antap, time ko town, one story ko one ship drown, go down, and second number 3 loyan, and me flash and water no. Or you know, look one something, look one man, or you know, look one piece timber, or something really currently come to pride with muscle, you know. Only look no more, or you know, look one something. You know, look one something. Only, only go back, only finish no more. Finish now, only 30, only drown, only run, only go. Only you'll get along England, where they start wait, in no car. Only one man. Only they start for number 4 ship, let me come.
Ruth says the story went round Erromango that there had been a big fight. On the other side of Potnarravin, there was one old chief called Nobbin. He said, "Okay, Potney, you fought last time, now it's my turn. I'm giving you an order. If you see a steamship coming, you send a sign to me as it's my turn now. I'll fight next time." But there wasn't a ship for a long time. Then 2 ships came. One was carrying guns, the other materials for making houses. If they killed all the Erromangans, they would put their houses to it because they saw our place, Erromango, and they wanted it, as it's a great place. The old man had already said, "Keep a watch for a steamship and then let me know." When the old man saw the sign, he made a custom ceremony. He carried a magic stone and put it in water. And that day, because he used custom from Tanna, there was lightning from a clear sky, big lightning. Everybody's eyes were wide. When the lightning stopped, then came the thunder, big thunder, which threw 2 stones into the air. He said, "Mark the 2 ships well." When the ships came between Goat Island and Rantop, he commanded the 2 stones to come down with the thunder. One came down straight onto one ship and it sank. Another one came down too on the second ship and it sank. The third stone just splashed in the water. You couldn't see anything, no people. You couldn't see any pieces of timber or anything they carried for fighting. You couldn't see anything at all. They went back, it was all over. They were all dead and drowned. Everyone in England, they were waiting for news, but there wasn't any, because not one man survived.
Mas paslo Tanna, they ask him one Tanna. Hey, me like so one island ya, Lobless ya, and me got some little blame. I didn't Montana and point to come to Erromango, say, Erromango. Time Molicam. So, time Molicam, don't Erromango. Time Molicam behind and about Posi, Molicam, good pay, Molicam was a sub-treating locutor manero. Giving 3 Olketa, treating locutor keta, one something, Molicam, only Stabaski, Molketalicatem, salute, only Molketali stealing, a salute, only paying 5 Fatu or 10 Fatu. Only quarrel more people as an usually go still no more. Only make him sometime only come, time only come, or mania go with him, or get a caram, salute, go give him, only pay finish, time or catan go stand up town, and then go stand up no way, or the shooting a man. Shoot to get come to shoot. Them only shooting them to show, or shooting more mania no more. After make him go home, only 3 or get only 3 locutor. After that, they say, "Oh, no, 7 now by you make a motion from Orissa, making motion now." After long 1800, one ship or small Latin yacht, one ship. Come a layer, small Orissa looks at it too, more sorry, no money. We got a long 2 man, one in blame no why, one in blame not. Them say to Lapita. Them say you are supposed to play one free long on Sakirim Yola. You must ask him to bend. You must take him to bend it. He asked him to pull out Malaya. But 1800 by you to play must go ask him to bend it. Hardly time.
Then the 4th ship came. It had to pass by Tanna. They asked the people there if they knew of an island with sandalwood nearby. A Tannese man pointed to Erromango. They came to Erromango. That's fine, but they mistreated the Erromango people. They gave them alcohol. They treated them badly. They asked them to cut sandalwood. They took and paid people only 5 vatu or 10 vatu. They carried away big sandalwood trees and just stole them and carried them away. They used to do that. Sometimes they would come, people would go and carry the sandalwood for them and they'd pay them. But when people were still standing on the shore, they'd shoot them. They'd fire on the shore from their boats and shoot them. Sometimes they'd give people so much alcohol they'd get really drunk. The Erromangan people didn't know what to do now because of this behavior. Then in 1800, a small ship like a yacht came, and they could see the situation and were sorry for the people. They told 2 men, one Nowai and the other Nagat, 2 chiefs, if you want to be free from people killing you, then you must ask for independence. You must take independence. This was 1800. Now, I'll stop it there. In the story continues, and the people go to sail off to England to ask for independence and a better life. It's a wonderful story, but time is running short. Yeah. Now I won't. I don't have time to go into the voyage artifacts in European museums, so I can talk about it in the discussion. In the United Kingdom, the Cambridge University Museum of Ark and Anth has several objects. The Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford has about 16 objects. There's a flute in the Saffron Walden Museum, and there's paintings and drawings in the National Maritime Museum and the British Library, London, that we would be seeking to borrow some of these. In Sweden, at the Ethnographic Museum in Stockholm, there's about 6 objects. In Göttingen, Germany, there's about 18 objects. In Austria, in the newly opened Welt Museum, there's 2 objects from Vanuatu. In Australia, as far as I know, there's only 1 object, some panpipes in the Australian Museum, but there are lots of original drawings from Cook's visit and prints in the National Library of Australia in Canberra, the Mitchell Library in Sydney, and the State Library of Victoria in Melbourne. There's some further original drawings in the Public Archives of Canada in Ottawa. There's at least 1 drawing, relevant drawing in the Alexander Turnbull Library in Wellington, New Zealand. And in Germany, there's an important drawing in the Staatsbibliothek in Berlin. Also, there are, of course, many natural history specimens that were collected by particularly the Forsters, who were the naturalists on the voyage. And I just need to do some research about where they may be, and we might be able to borrow or get copies of photographs of some of these. So these are the sort of objects that we would hope to bring to Vanuatu, back to Vanuatu for the first time in 250 years. A lot of the objects are things like clubs, spears, bows and arrows, and such. There's some headrests, the flute I mentioned, and some other small artifacts, which we think will be of tremendous interest to people. So the 2 kind of main events that we're planning, along with the others I mentioned, really are to get to allow people to put down their oral accounts, their Captain Cook, or our Captain Cook, our Vanuatu Captain Cook, as a sort of counterpoint to the official voyage transcripts, which may or may not be talking about the same events, or perhaps different events, and certainly show, I think, quite different temporalities. I mentioned the point about the namesake of the Pauyang or Pawang or Pavagan on Tanna, alive today, who could quite reasonably speak about when I, talking in the first person, met Captain Cook. Obviously, that's a different temporality from commemorating something that took place 250 years ago. I'll leave it there, and hopefully there'll be some interesting discussion and questions. Thank you very much for your attendance on behalf of myself and the members of the Erromango Cultural Association, Anna Nalpa and Ruth Yapini, who have put together this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Matthew is available for us to have a conversation. Can you go to the chat?
Yes, most certainly. I see there's a question in the.
Yes, there is a question.
Yeah, from Sadna. Well, the thing about Vanuatu, I mean, I was trying to think. In Port Vila, there is only one bust and one statue, and in the entire country there are probably certainly less than 10, I would think. So people don't have a great experience of sort of public art in the way that they might if they lived in some big city somewhere. I'm not sure that I've seen Michael Parakowai's sculpture of a reflective Captain Cook. It sounds really interesting. And one thing that certainly I think would be another event to have would be an art exhibition. The Cultural Centre did this in 2015 when we had an international conference on the Lapita culture, the real discoverers of Vanuatu. And it was a fantastic exhibition of art that that local artists did, sort of in response to the Lapita culture. And I'm sure that we could do a very similar competition in relation to Captain Cook. But yeah, people's experience of that sort of public art, all we've got is the bust of Golovnin, the second 11, as one of the government ministers said, you know, what, we've got a statue of Captain Cook, we've got Golovnin, he didn't turn up till 1809. And then there's a rather bizarre statue outside the Parliament, which is from a Chinese statue foundry, obviously made by someone who'd never seen a Ni-Vanuatu, which is the Ni-Vanuatu family pointing into the distance in sort of classic socialist realist form. A man, a woman, and two kids. I guess they figure that Ni-Vanuatu are one of the ethnic minorities, so we're allowed to have two kids at the time when it was the one child policy in China. And they're the only two statues that we've got at the moment. So I'm not surprised that people sort of think we should have a statue of Captain Cook, whatever they might think about him, just because, you know, we've already got one of this obscure Russian guy who spent a couple of weeks on Tanna in 1809. But yeah, I mean, the question about, well, I mean, if people want to have a statue, that's, you know, that's fine. I'm sure Boris Johnson would be more than happy to pay for a statue of the victorious Captain Cook pointing over Vanuatu. I'm sure it would receive a witty response were it to be delivered to Vanuatu.
Cook seems to be the ultimate avatar, doesn't he? He can be whatever he's needed for whatever period, you know.
Well, we wanted in the exhibition. I mean, it's very important because people do have very different views of Cook. I remember once a drunken politician, I was trying to explain to him at some celebration about the Captain Cook project. He said, "Captain Cook's an arsehole." You know? So there are different viewpoints about him. So at one stage, I had this idea that at the end of the exhibition at the museum, we could sort of pose the question: well, do you think Captain Cook, was he okay, or was he, you know, a horrible person? And yeah, if you thought he was okay, we'd have a little statue of Captain Cook, and you could kind of like put a flower in front of it. And then we were going to have a guy dressed as Captain Cook in some stocks. And if you didn't like Captain Cook, you could kind of throw rotten fruit at him. But then everyone decided that I should be the model for the Captain Cook in the stock. So I've kind of got off that idea. But certainly we don't want to sort of, yeah, the idea is not a sort of celebration of the wonderful Captain Cook. You know, we do want to have, you know, there's obviously a range of viewpoints that can be explored. But
it's one of those strange things, isn't it, Matthew? Cook himself would not have considered himself the discoverer of many of these places. I mean, his own journals often, you know, reflect on the fact that other people had been there first. So.
Well, he was looking having just read the journals again, he was looking for Queiros's La Austrialia dell'Espiritu Santo, because before he even sees Vanuatu, he says, "Oh, I'm on the right latitude now. You know, I'm heading west." You know, he's looking for the place that Queiros had recorded in 1606. That was, as you know, not really kind of well placed on the charts of the time. And there had apparently only been one other European visitor, and that was de Bougainville, who just passed. He also knew where he was. You know, he knew he was in the vicinity of Queiros's La Austrialia dell'Espiritu Santo, but he just kind of passed through the group very quickly, and he only landed on the Isle of Ambai very briefly. So he was there a few years before Cook, but you know, he hardly gets a mention when his 250th anniversary. I mean, even the French embassy didn't put anything on. You know, he's kind of a bit of a non-entity. But Cook has sort of got everyone's imagination, and the stories are all about, you know, the indigenous stories are all about Cook. They're not about de Bougainville or Queiros or, you know. So it's interesting that, yeah, for whatever reasons, Captain Cook is the man who gets all the, I don't know if credit's the right word, but I mean, the thing about Cook is he did map the archipelago. It had been seen before by Europeans, but had never been mapped. And so he does have, you know, some claim for fame, and he visited far more of the islands than any European had visited earlier on, and left accounts which are very valuable and are valuable to the people of the islands themselves. You know, who, it's fantastic that on Tanna he records the name of, I think, at least 3 people, and those, because names are kind of passed on from generation to generation and give the rights to land, you can kind of find the same person that he met in 2021 and ask him for his account of Captain Cook or his opinion about Captain Cook.
Excellent. I can see Ron Adams has got a hand up. Ron, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, a question. Thanks very much, Matthew. A really stimulating presentation. You're probably aware that in 1842, a missionary at Port Resolution recorded a local tradition there of when Cook was at Port Resolution in 1774. And that was by the missionary Tanna. And he records in that local tradition that he wrote down in his journal how Captain Cook left 2 kangaroos, which the people got sick of when they began to howl, so they killed them and they ate them. Well, we know from Cook's journal that in fact he left 2, a Tahitian dog and a Tahitian bitch that he had brought with him from Polynesia, and they were in fact the animals that howled, and the people ate them, killed them and ate them. Now, I was struck by Ruth Yapini's reference to the apples being eaten, and I think that this is a recurring theme in a lot of the stories, if you're looking for it, that food exchange is often a central feature, and so that raises for me the issue that one of the really important contexts that we have to take into account in attaching significance to the oral traditions is the time at which they were told, not the time that they refer to, and there you've got sort of buggered up chronology, but the time at which they were told. And if you combine that with the importance of food exchange in terms of making for friendship or enemies, and then you can see a significance in terms of the story is Captain Cook gave this food to the Tannese, which was eaten. Captain Cook gave these apples to the Erromangans, which was eaten. Now, 1842, there's a lot of warfare going on in Port Resolution, and the group that Cook gave the 2 dogs to was at war with some groups slightly to the north. So the claim being made in 1842, I think, is that Captain Cook was an ally of ours, not the people on the other side of Port Resolution. He was an ally of ours. And how do we know this? Well, because we exchanged food. He gave us food, which we ate. And I suspect that a similar sort of dynamic is operating at Erromanga and probably other places as well that would be really exciting, I think, to include in what you're planning to do for 2024.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, I mean, I did once know about the Tanna thing, but I'll need to go back and check that one again. I knew there were other stories that I'd read. I just couldn't pull them all up for this presentation. I found interesting. Ruth Yapini's talk about she mentions two fruit apples. She mentions pineapples, and there's certainly a pineapple on Erromango, and in 1983 it was pointed out to me as being called Captain Cook. And the belief, certainly way back then, was that the pineapples were introduced by Captain Cook. The apple is an interesting thing, and especially a carton of apples, because of course, in recent years we've had the Pacific Labour Scheme supplying fruit pickers to Australia and New Zealand. And this is a big feature of society in terms of the whole economy of Vanuatu at the moment. So the fact that she mentioned a carton of apples, to me, is very much a sort of reflection of the situation we have now, where you know, when people go to become seasonal labourers overseas, in Bislamar, it's described as kakai apple. They've gone to eat apples overseas, you see. So, you know, the idea that really they're not actually working, they're just kind of, they're there and there's all this fruit and they're eating it. So yeah, I think some of those kind of things that you mentioned are very pertinent. I would clarify that, I mean, we're still sort of working through this and talking to people. We're at an early stage of the organisation of events for 2024, because we've been waiting for the Council of Ministers to pass a budget, because we can't really do anything without a budget, because bringing all these artefacts over from overseas is going to be incredibly expensive. I mean, just the insurance alone on 250-year-old clubs from Malakula, you can't even imagine how much that would be. So we're sort of been waiting for the Council of Ministers to approve the final budget, so we, like I said, we haven't really kind of got going. But one thing that I'm exploring is really the fact that for us it doesn't matter if as you said, the chronology is mucked up, because it's our Captain Cook. You know, we're not interested in the 4th of August, 1774, in the way that we're interested in it in terms of sort of European historiography. So in a way, I welcome all these wonderful stories about Captain Cook and this idea in North Pentecost that they say, no, he didn't come in 1774, he came in 1887. You know, so to me, there are different temporalities that people are considering. And, you know, they kind of stand on their own. So it's not an exercise in trying to figure out how much of the story of Captain Cook people have got right. That's not the thing. The thing is, it's our Captain Cook. It doesn't really matter what it says in Beaglehole's journal at that level. We're celebrating, people in Vanuatu's view of Captain Cook.
I'm afraid we've really run out of time. That was just fantastic and completely fascinating. As I said, you know, the ultimate avatar and an utterly mutable Captain Cook. I love it. It's fantastic stuff. And I really look forward to joining you in 2024 at the exhibition.
Yeah, no, we'll have that. We'll have a conference. We'll certainly invite Ron. You'll have to come along as well, and others interested in discussing Captain Cook, and hopefully we'll find out more information. More artefacts will inevitably turn up once these museums start looking into their collections. Thank you.
Well, I am going to save the chat, so there will be, if there's anything in there, Rosalie's just put something in there about Pitcairn and Norfolk. I think it would be, I will send you the chat so that you'll be able to see what people say. We've also recorded this. That brings us to the end of the first day of the Global Encounters inaugural symposium. We start again tomorrow. We're doing different time zones, as you will notice, so that we can accommodate our colleagues in other parts of the world. So tomorrow we start at 1 p.m. and that is Melbourne time, Australian Eastern Summer Time, 1 p.m. And that you'll hear from the Global Encounters team, and that will be followed We'll speak for an hour, and then we have the half-hour break. We'll be reconvening at 2:30 when Dr. Hilma Farid, Director General of Culture for Indonesia, will be talking to us. And then we'll finish up 4 to 5 p.m. tomorrow. Will be Ian McNiven, who will be talking about the Coral Sea Interaction Sphere and the new museum it's the Northern Queensland Museum's exhibition, which is dedicated to the Coral Sea and the Coral Sea Interaction Sphere. So thank you so much. It's been a fantastic start, really wonderful. So thank you, everybody. I hope we see as many of you as we can tomorrow as well. Bye-bye.